Shalom. Call Limelight, Hawa Bashem, Yahushua Bashem Rakakwadash, double honors to the elders and apostles, a great millstone, rule and teach well, and a sincere Shalom, the 144,001 third. So, it's a quick little topic through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem, Yahushua Bashem Rakakwadash. Quick little rundown, and then I'll go into the scriptures. King David, after King Saul was messing with him, jealousy, envy. King David, he was a handsome man. Women were after him. He was powerful. He's more powerful than Saul. From the looks of it, he looked better than Saul, right? He was a better leader than Saul. He had all these attributes about him that made King Saul jealous. Okay? And King Saul tried to kill King David. He had a javelin. So it was premeditated because who keeps a javelin with him? If you don't know what a javelin is a spear, but it's dedicated for throwing. Okay, it's not, you don't really use it for hand-to-hand, melee combat. A spear, you don't really throw a spear. All right, you just keep it in your hands, try to poke somebody up with it. A javelin is basically like a bow and arrow, right? You throw it, or I should say it's like an arrow. You throw it. So King Saul, he didn't want to run up on David, get into a close quarter combat. So he wanted to, let's get the scripture on it. Okay, let me see if I can find it real quick. This is 1 Samuel. The 18th chapter, and verse 10. And it came to pass on the morrow that the evil spirit from the Most High came upon Saul, and he prophesied in the midst of the house, and David played with his hand, and as at other times there was a javelin in Saul's hand. So King Saul was keeping a javelin in his hand. Again, a javelin, is not a spear. It's a different type of weapon. It looks similar to a spear, all right, a long pointy stick, but you don't fight with a javelin, okay? Like, you don't get into combat with a javelin per se, up close. You throw it, all right? You see it in the Olympics. And Saul cast a javelin, for he said, I will smite David even to the wall with it, and David avoided out of his presence twice. So King Saul, he was trying to take that javelin, pierce David up, and basically have him like a poster, stick him to the wall. He wanted to take David out because he was plagued by that spirit. All right, it was putting even more evil thoughts in his mind against David that he already initially had from jealousy. Okay. All right, Salaki on that. So once that happened, King Saul made it very apparent that he wanted King David dead. All right. King David fled. So what did he do? Where did he flee to? Okay. According to the biblical narrative, before becoming king of Israel, David served as a mercenary and military leader for the Philistines, who were a heathen or Gentile nation. Fleeing the murderous pursuit of King Saul, David sought asylum in the Philistine city of Gath. There he offered his services as a warlord to the Philistine king Achish. The mercenary contract, King Achish granted David the town of Ziklag. In exchange, David and his private army of 600 Hebrew warriors defended the southern flank of Philistine territory. While acting as a Philistine warlord, David actually raided non-Israelite tribes such as the Jashurites and Amalekites. He systematically left no witnesses alive so he could lie to King Ashesh and claim he was actually attacking Israelite settlements, thereby maintaining his precarious trust. Almost fighting Israel, David's service peaked when King Ashish appointed him as his personal bodyguard and requested that David's forces march alongside the Philistines against King Saul's army. All right, Salaki on that again. Probably gonna merge all. It's what three parts at this point. I'm probably gonna merge them all together. So I'm gonna reread this. Almost fighting Israel. Give me a moment. Let me get myself situated real quick. Okay. Almost fighting Israel. David's service peaked when King Ashish appointed him as his personal bodyguard and requested that David's forces march alongside the Philistines against King Saul's army. However, the other Philistine commanders objected, fearing David's loyalty would turn in the heat of battle, and they sent him back to Ziklag. So King David, this is an example because of Yahweh's ways being higher than our ways, because logically speaking, why would you join forces in servitude under a heathen? All right, when you're and this is David was a very mighty warrior at the time. All right, he was one of, if not the most powerful warrior on the planet Earth. All right, in his group, his mercenaries, his soldiers, they were mighty men. All right, King David was a mighty man. He killed tens and thousands of heathen. All right, hey, and human beings in general were much stronger back then than we are now. All right, human beings back then could defeat lions, and the lions back then were stronger too. The everything was better. The grapes were better, the food was more nutritious, the food was larger. All right, the food potentially could have grown even faster. The earth now is weak. The angel, what was it, Gabriel, or one of the angels, was telling that to Esdras. He was telling him, like, yeah, the earth is weaker now because of sin, iniquity. So of course, the stamina, just the stamina to be able to kill 10,000 people. Again, they're not using guns. King David had what? A sling, which is just like a trash version of a bow and arrow, archery. And he had what? A sword and a spear. So he's pretty much up close and personal, slicing people up. Imagine swinging the sword that much to where you take out 25,000 people. And each one of those individuals is a powerful person, right? It's not like an average Joe Schmo. Even someone like these MMA guys, right? Or some of these guys that practice kendo and HEMA and all these guys, right? Warriors of today that would be similar to the warriors of the past. Because the warriors of the past were pretty much what? HEMA, kendo, mixed with some MMA, Of course, now modern warriors, the equivalent back then would be using fighter jets and tanks and M16s and whatnot. So let's get this. This is 1 Samuel, the 13th chapter, and verse 14, and it reads, "But now thy kingdom Actually, hold on. Yeah, 1 Samuel 13 and 14. But now thy kingdom shall not continue. Yahweh has sought him a man after his own heart. All right. And the Lord had commanded him to be captain over his people, because thou hast not kept that which Yahweh commanded thee. All right. And who was this? He was basically dissing Saul and saying, yeah, this is about to be David's. Okay. So King David is a man after Yahweh's heart. But wait a minute, King David became a servant to a heathen. All right. And he was lying. He was lying and being a servant to a heathen. Now, those two things, especially willingly, now, of course, is one thing if you're in captivity, okay, and you're, like Jake the past several centuries. But it's one thing like that, but it's another thing when you willingly go do it, then you're lying. But guess what? King David was after Yahweh's own heart. All right. So that's a high status man right there. That was the highest status man on the planet Earth. And guess what? He's going to be what? The second highest status man on the planet Earth under Yahweh Shai when he returns. Let's get that in. What is that? Ezekiel 37. Let's get that on here. Ezekiel 37. Ezekiel the 37th chapter. Ezekiel 37 and 24. And David my servant shall be king over them, and they all shall have one shepherd. They shall all also walk in my judgments and observe my statutes and do them. So guess what? Okay. When the Israelites are put back in the land, we have spiritual power. Even before then, right? When Jacob's trouble starts popping off, King David is going to rise up. All right, let's get that in Jeremiah 30. Jeremiah 30 and 7. Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. For it shall come to pass in that day, saith Yahweh of hosts, that I will break his yoke from off thy neck, and will burst thy bonds, and strangers shall no more serve themselves of him, but they shall serve Yahweh their power, and David their king, whom I will raise up into them. So guess what? When Jacob's trouble starts popping off, King David's gonna get raised up. All right. Now, is King David walking among us right now? Is King David in the spiritual realm? You know, maybe he passed away and he's in the spiritual realm, and then he gets brought back to life. We'll see. All right. We'll see. And from that point on forward, King David, and guess why King David is gonna get lifted up in Jacob's trouble? Because that's gonna be war. All right, Jacob's trouble is gonna be war, all out war. It's not gonna be no more prophesying and all that. Is, of course, the elect is gonna talk amongst themselves, have a conversation, but for the most part, it's just gonna be warfare. All right, you're gonna be roaming around, all right, taking women, taking people's resources, all right, fighting off whatever opposition comes your way, raiding people. Because hey, guess what King David was doing? He was a raider. All right, he was a savage, right? In righteousness. Now, he wasn't going around being a fruit cup or just doing, breaking the law in these disastrous ways. Nah, he was righteous, but guess what? He was still going around pulling up on people, killing them, all right? Probably smiling, laughing. So you got to think from these heathens' perspective, from Amalek's perspective, from Edom's perspective, from all these heathens' perspective, King David was evil. Because he's a random guy that just pulled up, killed them, killed the babies, killed the women, right? That's what humans look at as like weak. You should protect the babies, the women. He was killing them, right? Hey, wasn't King David going around cutting off penises? Yeah, King David was going around cutting off penises. I think was to get King Saul's daughter for marriage. So King David wasn't no softy, man. He was a savage. He was a super savage. Okay? And guess what? He's gonna come back and be in that super savage spirit. Alright, because that's how Yahweh created him to be. Now let's get this scripture. And I'm gonna go into the account that I read in Safari. So don't worry. Let's get this right here. Isaiah 55 and verse 8. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith Yahweh. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. So Yahweh is on a different existence when it comes to going into these scriptures, okay? Understanding the times, have how certain things play out, why they played out that way, okay? How you can't comprehend it, because again, King David, he pledged allegiance to a heathen king, was dwelling amongst heathen, okay, and he was lying. He was under the servitude of a heathen and lying. Okay, under the servitude of a heathen and lying. All right, you would think just me saying it like that, you would think King David is fucking off, but he's not. All right, because Yahweh is gonna play the lot of anybody. It could be you, me, whoever, how he wants to play it. So this is 1 Samuel, the 21st chapter, and this is verse 9. And the priest said, the sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom thou slewest in the valley of Elah, behold, it is here wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If thou wilt take it, for there is no other save that here. And David said, there is none like it, give it to me. So like that, so give it to me. So King David took Goliath's massive barbaric sword, all right, because he needed a weapon. Why? He's going out in the field, he's going out on the journey, he needs a way to hunt, you know, kill an animal with a sword, some, you know, self-defense, you know, raiding, right, on the offense, okay? And David arose and fled that day for fear of Saul, and went to Achish, probably butchering that, the king of Gath. So these are Philistines, these are so-called Africans, right? And the servants of Achish said unto him, is not this David the king of the land? Did they not sing one to another of him in dances, saying, Saul have slain his 1,000? These are the women of Israel, right? And David his 10s of thousands. So even the heathen knew that, or assumed that, King David is the king, because he's putting in more work than the actual king, or who is the king. So he's more than likely the king. So, you know, they're making that assumption. And David laid up these words in his heart, and was sore afraid of Achish, the king of Gath. See, he's afraid, okay? And he changed his behavior before them and feigned himself mad in their hands. So he's acting like he's, you know, King David did that a lot. King David did that a lot, man. He would act like, actually, I think this is the only account where he did it. Okay? And feigned himself mad in their hands, and scrabbled on the doors of the gate, and let his spittle fall down upon his beard. So King David is basically acting like he's retarded, because they're like think about it. Imagine you're at war, okay, with somebody, and their mightiest warrior pulls up to you, and you're gonna be like, what? Like, this is the most mightiest warrior probably you ever even seen in your life, and he's your opposition. He's pulling up to you, and you're like, what is this? And he's not like he trying to like fight or nothing. And then on top of that, he pull up and he acting like he mentally disabled. All right, you're gonna be like, what is this? Right? You're gonna be perplexed. And scribbled on the doors of the gate, and let his spittle fall down upon his beard. So he's scratching on the wall. He's scratching on the wall, and spit is drooling all in his beard. Then said Achish unto his servants, lo, ye see the man is mad. Wherefore then have ye brought him to me? Have I need of mad men, that ye have brought this fellow to play the madman in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house? So King Ashesh is like, bro, this dude is powerful and he's mentally unstable. Why did you bring this dude to me? Like, this is a threat to the kingdom. Okay, but guess what? King David did this. All right, this is the last part. I'm gonna merge them together. Keep getting cut-offs. So this is 1 Samuel 27 chapter. And I'm gonna read the whole thing. I'm in this off here. Okay. And David said in his heart, I shall now perish one day by the hand of Saul. There is nothing better for me than I should speedily escape into the land of the Philistines, and Saul should despair of me, to seek me any more in any coast of Israel, so shall I escape out of his hand. And David arose, and he passed over with the 600 men that were with him unto Ashesh, the son of Maoch, king of Gath. So these are Hamites, Philistines, okay, which are offshoots, lineages of Ham, which today would be so-called Africans. All right, what you got? What is them? Sudan, so on and so forth. Hey, and those dudes are huge. Okay, King David was fighting. King David was up against giants. 10-foot tall dudes with 6 fingers and 6 toes. I mean, look at Bol Bol. Look at Bol Bol. He was what, 7'5", and then his dad was like 7'7". Big old, dark, tall. Imagine a dude like that, but he got muscle on him, got armor on him, got a 8 foot long spear. Okay. Verse 3. And David dwelt with Ashesh at Gath, he and his men, and every man with his household, even David with his 2 wives, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail the Carmelitess, Nabal's wife. And it was told Saul that David was fled to Gath, and he sought no more again for him. And David said unto Ashesh, if I have now found grace in thine eyes, let them give me a place in some town in the country, that I may dwell there. For why should thy servant dwell in a royal city with thee? Then Ashesh gave him Ziklag that day, wherefore Ziklag pertaineth unto the kings of Jehoiada unto this day. So guess what? So King David was a servant. Of course, he was lying. All right, he was being very deceptive. Okay, he wasn't really truly under this man's authority. All right, truly in his heart, he was just playing that role to do what he needs to do, get the resources. All right, have a safe, secure area. Okay, not have to try to deal with Saul. No, yeah, David at this time. All right, David at this time, he could have killed King Saul. He could have killed him, but he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it that way. Howard didn't want it to play out that way. All right. Ultimately, David and Saul, I think they met up in the cave. They got into a fight. David won the fight, spared Saul's life. King Saul said David's better than him. He humbled down. He ran away, and I believe he killed himself later on, right, with his son Jonathan. I think Jonathan died. And Jonathan and King David were basically like best friends forever. All right, their souls were intertwined. But anyways, verse 7. In that time David dwelt in the country of the Philistines, was a full year and 4 months. And David and his men went up and invaded the Jeshurites and the Gezrites and Amalekites, for those nations were of old the inhabitants of the land, as thou goest to Shur, even into the land of Egypt. And David smote the land and left neither man nor woman alive. So he was killing everything. Everything had to go. All right. You had to get. He was wiping noses. All right. He saw a woman. She could have been attractive. Killed her. All right. Oh well. Dead. And took away the sheep and the oxen and the asses and the camels and the apparel. So that's a raid. All right. He's raiding these people. They're getting raided. All right. He pulled up, got a sword, got a spear, got his sling stones. He pulls up, And King David did guerrilla warfare, by the way. All right, he heavily leaned upon guerrilla warfare. Okay, that's how the Israelites always fought, guerrilla warfare. Um, where was I? And the camels and the apparel and returned and came into Ashesh. And Ashesh said, whither have ye made a road today? And David said, against the south of Yahwadah, and against the south of the Jerahmeelites, and against the south of the Kenites. And David saved neither man nor woman alive, to bring tidings to Gath, saying, lest they should tell on us, saying, so did David, and so will be his manner all the while he dwelleth in the country of the Philistines. And Ashesh believed David, saying, he hath made his people Israel utterly to abhor him. Therefore he shall be my servant forever. So Ashesh is like, oh, he's killing his own people. All right, he's truly with us. Even though King David is lying, and he's not raiding his own people. Okay, he's raiding the these other heathen. So guess what? You know, you may be put into a similar situation where you may have to be subservient to some heathens, so to speak, for a while. And then when your time comes, you bust a move. All right? So Adoran Ratazada is edifying. A shalom.